Thank you for your courage.
Thank you, Maura.
You're going to be telling a story you couldn't even think about, never mind talk about, for 47 years.
Yes.
Tell us about that. Well, you say it's a 30-year valley of the shadow of death.
It's true. I was raised in a family that had come here as refugees in 1951, born in 55. My dad was an angry man. We believe that he had PTSD. Back then, I don't think anyone was diagnosing or treating it, but Dad had an anger in him that...
Russian. Mom and Dad married in a prisoner of war camp.
They were. That's where they met.
Wow. Who knows what abuses they experienced?
My dad was a prisoner of war from, he fought at Stalingrad. And Mom, with her mother and sister and my brother Tony, had been taken prisoner in Leningrad and then moved to Germany during the war. And so they got here in 51, and Dad was just an angry man that I guess I was his
whipping boy.
Like a piñata. Yeah. And when Dad lost his cool, there was just no filter. There was no off button.
Truly brutal.
It was brutal, yeah. And so we lived with that for many years. And
age 11?
Age 11, I had a beating that was so severe. And after the beating, my dad had me strip. And we had a room in our house where the furnace was. And he put me in that room, shut off the light, and I had to stay there. It seemed like forever. And it was like a gasket blew in my brain that day, and I had decided that I was going to leave home at age 11. And I did. I packed my bag that night. There was an old suitcase that Mom and Dad had, cardboard suitcase that I packed, left it at the side of the house, and in the morning when it looked like I was going to school, instead I went to the bus and I ended up going to Yorkville, that I had seen a few times with my older brother. All the hippie generation was starting. And I thought that I was going to go to Yorkville and find a new family.
Instead, you found a pedophile.
I did. Age 11, I'm standing on the street with my little suitcase, hoping that I would find somebody that, thinking maybe I could find a commune, that somebody would take me in and look after me. And this man kept coming to me, and I was, chasing him away the first few times, and he said, "Look, maybe I can help you." And he went to the phone booth and pretended to make a call, and he said he knew two sisters that were nurses that were part of a commune, and they had agreed to take me in, and he would take me to them. And instead of taking me to them, he took me to his apartment in North Toronto, and I was brutally raped.
This violation would lead to a cascade of just erosion.
Absolutely.
In your life. I'm going to fast track a little bit here. By 13, drugs, alcohol, sex, a drug dealer in grade 8.
Yes.
You were shooting up at 17.
Yes.
You ended up in Montreal, so young. Code Blue, you had an overdose.
I did.
That thankfully you survived.
I survived, and when all these things were happening to me, I was angry at myself. I was very angry at my father. I was angry at God. Where's God? It's like, for a poker player, it's like you get dealt a bad hand.
Yeah.
And I had been dealt a bad hand.
Nothing to deserve it.
No. And so I was angry at God, but he was there. And I found out years later that I was never alone. He was always there. When I was in the hospital, Code Blue, it just happened to be that a doctor was there from Amsterdam who was visiting as part of a, I don't know when you call it, a conference. And he was the one that treated me, and it was just a miracle that I came back. That you even
survived.
Yes.
Well, I wonder if there are people watching who would remember Rochdale. Became the place where the hippies and the drugs just abounded.
Yes.
And you were there for drugs.
I was there. I was a drug dealer. Look, I was doing everything I could to medicate the pain that I was feeling from my wounds. Drugs, alcohol, sex, everything. And I became a drug dealer. Rochdale is where I would go to get my drugs. And one day I go to see my dealer and he says, "Tim, I can't sell you any drugs." And I said, "Why not?" He says, "Because I found the Lord and I'm not doing that anymore."
In 1972, at the peak, the catacombs were seeing 2,000 to 2,500 people on a Thursday night.
Yes.
This was cooking.
Oh, it was amazing, yes. And so it was after one of the Thursday night services that I went home and I fell on my knees and asked Jesus into my heart. And there was a change in me. And
I'm just going to help you be honest
Yeah.
here. And many will identify. The struggle you had was ongoing. You
Ongoing.
struggled with sin. And what did you ultimately say to God?
I don't want to waste your time. I'm sorry. Just one thing I ask is that day when I stand before you on Judgment Day, please remember that I gave it my best shot. And I walked away from God.
That he never let go of you.
I let go of him, but he never let go of me.
A miracle, a crisis and a miracle.
Yes,
You're now married. You have a 3-year-old son,
yes,
and he drowns.
yes. Lake Aquitaine, I was visiting my brother-in-law and his wife, and we were just having a drink, and the kids were playing in the complex, in the townhouse complex. And we lost track of time, and all of a sudden my stepdaughter runs in screaming, "I'll never see my brother again." And I say, "Where's your brother?" She says, "In the lake." And barefoot, I run to the lake. This is March, it's cold out. And I see a stranger with my son in his arms walking out of the lake. And he hands him to me. And I start CPR and nothing's working. And I cry out to God, I said, "Please, don't take my son, anything." Well, this stranger, I believe, to this day, I believe it was an angel. He was an angel.
Your son had been in the water, underwater.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. This was a big story. It was on the front page of Toronto Sun 2 Sundays in a row. He had
Seaweed.
been under...
Tell
oh,
him
yes.
about the seaweed.
Well, we start like a sit-up, bringing him forward, and all this water is coming out, seaweed, all this junk, still not breathing, and we just kept with it. And more junk came out, and then finally he coughed and he cried.
Was saved. And you ended up going back to church.
Oh,
Your
yes.
relationship with the Lord was restored.
It was.
And here's the thing. I don't know if you connect this, Tim, but to me that was a picture of you. That there was life for you. There was a resurrected life for you, but there was all that seaweed blocking the path.
All that junk.
In a marvelous group called Band of Brothers,
Yes,
the challenge one day would be the wound.
yes.
What is the wound? And God, what did God say to you?
All right. When I went to Band of Brothers, I had no idea what this was. Somebody was praying for me. Somebody was praying, who should I bring? And God kept giving him my name. I didn't know this man very well, but he kept praying and he kept calling me. And finally he wore me down, and next thing I know, I'm driving to Ottawa to this Band of Brothers retreat, boot camp, we'll call it. And I knew at that point that something was wrong, and there was a wound that I was carrying. And so afterwards, there were small groups that started. It was in the small group that we were about to go into that chapter of the wound. And it was the night before the small group that I had an encounter with God, where he came to me in the middle of the night. And it was like I was in a cocoon of love. And he's speaking to me. And he's saying, "You've carried that wound long enough. Give it to me."
It's like that seaweed coming out so
It
that you could
was.
breathe and live.
And I'm saying to God, can I trust you? It's God. But I didn't trust him until that point. And when I finally said yes, and he said that he wanted to be my father. And I allowed him to father me. And it was like that junk was just coming out of me, just pouring out.
And you say forgiveness has been the key.
It's been the key.
Forgiving even that abuser, the
I
man
had
who
to
raped you.
forgive my father. I
father.
had to forgive the man that raped me. I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive God. I'd been angry at God for all those years.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if your heart has been stirred, I've had people walk past me just weeping because there's something they've carried forever and never told anyone. We have people who are confidential, caring, compassionate, and waiting to listen to you, to pray for you. This could be your day of liberation. Don't miss that opportunity. There's a perfect parent who already knows, and he's waiting to bless you.